So today's Amud is Daf Chavdal. Today's Amud is Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph. So we're mamish up to the beginning of the Amud, but it's going on the Mishnah. So the Mishnah we had a whole bunch of different dinim, Tayi Malka, which straps you use and so on. So now we're going to explain those dinim in the Gemara. And interesting thing is the first three words of this Gemara, Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, there's actually discussion. The back says that Svar Macherim Einza, and some Svarim it doesn't exist as three words before. The problem is it's difficult to understand what is going on. That's the Rivon doesn't say anything, and the Akronim are busy with what's going on over here. I'll read the Gemara anyway. My time, the Gemara says, what's the reason? What's the reason of what then? From Gimel Amud Aleph at the top. My time, what's the reason? What are we asking about? What's the question? So the Pashas, many learn that my time, it means to say, why do we tie him to the why are we mevazim by tearing his clothes or by tying him to the Amud? Since it says in the pasuk Nikla that he has to be despised, he has to be the Nikla achicha leinecha. Yeah, that's the pasuk. Pasuk the Nikla achicha leinecha. So therefore, you do all these things. There's problems with such a pshat. Therefore, others say that it's actually going on the end of the Mishnah. The end of the Mishnah, which says that niskalka bein berei bein b'mayim potter, right? That if he katanim or gdolim, whatever the different shittas exactly, then he's potter. You don't continue hitting him. What's the reason for that? Because of a nikla. Okay, so it's different pshatim, and according to some Yinagoris, these words at all. Fine. See, this going to the beginning of the Mishnah or the end of the Mishnah. Amr Rav Sheshes Mishum Rav Elazar ben Azariah. Okay, here you have Rav Sheshes Mishum Rav Elazar ben Azariah. By the way, Klal Gadol. When it says Amr Rav something b'shem, it means that one person is saying in the name of the other. Mishum doesn't mean in the name of it. He heard it from him because that's not what Mishum means. And in this case, it's Muchachas. Yeah? Rav Sheshes was an Amor, Rav Elazar ben Azariah was a Tana. It can't be Rav Sheshes saying in the name of Rav Elazar ben Azariah, he heard from Rav Elazar ben Azariah. Rather, it means Rav Sheshes Mishum in the name of, in a more distant way, that he heard. This is something that he heard in the name of Rav Elazar ben Azariah. He didn't hear it himself from Rav Elazar ben Azariah because it was Doiris in between. I believe that Machs, Perushim Pirkei Avos over there, Machsavitri maybe says that there's a difference between B'Shem and Mishum. B'Shem is when you heard it from the person. Mishum means because of. In other words, he's saying something in the name of it, didn't hear it directly from him. So on Rav Sheshes Mishum Rav Elazar ben Azariah, Rav Sheshes says in the name, in other words, a din from Rav Elazar ben Azariah, Minayin le'ritzur shishal ega. How do you know? In the Mishnah we said the ritzur is of the ega, is of a calf, yeah, ega, baby cow. So how do you know this? Minayin le'ritzur shishal ega. D'chsev arboim yakan. It says in the pasuk arboim you can't give 40 mil because the summit in the next pasuk says lo yisachsam shoyer bedisha. You shouldn't muzzle a shoyer while it is threshing. By the way, we learn from here that it has to be the Makkos has to be a lav, which is dumia the lav the chasimus. Right? We learn therefore the lav shei b'mais is excluded and other such demodim. But here we're learning something else. From the fact that arboim yakan is next to lo yisachsam shoyer bedisha, we learn that right. It's the next pasuk. Seemingly no connection between the two. That we learn that the ritzur that you use is of an egal. Baby shower, in other words. Okay. Now, since we said things in Rav Sheshes in the name of Rav Elazar ben Azariah, we say some other things. Rav Sheshes from Rav Elazar ben Azariah, nothing to do with the Makkos. How do you know Yivama? Yivama means a woman who husband died, they have no children, so we know there's a chiyuv yibum to marry one of the brothers. If none of the brothers agree, so then there's to marry, so then there's a chiyuv chalitza. So here you have a situation. Livama who fell, in other words, her husband's brother is a mukashkin, someone who has boils, and the Maisa, a woman who's married to somebody who has mukashkin, is allowed to. We'd force him to divorce. So here you have a situation where she's Ivama Shanaflin and Mukashkin. We're saying Shein Chaysmei, so we don't force her to marry. We let her say that I don't want to marry him, and she doesn't have to marry him. So there's no chiyuv yibum. They're going to have to chalitza, but there's no yibum before the chalitza. So the Rishonim explain that, in other words, I might have thought, were it not for the following pasuk, I would have thought that she marries him and then gets divorced. Do the chiyuv yibum and then get divorced, because here we're saying that she doesn't have to go live with a mechlal. So she'ein choytzim, so we don't shut her up, we don't quieten her down. Say that do chalitza. That's what we say. Normally the chiyuv of yom before chalitza. At least bisman yom kitiklim. That's how I understand it. What to do yibum preferably. The man doesn't want to do yibum. The man doesn't want to do yibum. Then he does chalitza. No,
she's forced into it. She also has a choice.
Whether to do chalitza or not.
She has a choice. Yeah.
Always. So it's tak up shatner. And I thought that okay. I hear Minayni vamish enough is Makkos can ein chayis. It says the chsiv l'sach m'shay b'disha. The pasuk l'sach m'shay b'disha don't muzzle a shiur. Mesamach leiki yeshu achim yakam, which is the whole parish of Yom. So we don't muzzle, so to speak, the woman. We don't tell her to be quiet. To Rashi Rivon ein chayis ein megarim bo shaloi toima iyashiva. You let her say that I don't want to marry him. I hear your question. In other words, anytime a woman doesn't want to marry the person, you say you do chalitza. If that's the case, I don't understand the Gemara. Here, let's see. Look at Rashi from Yivamis Atal Domadala. Ein sois mintani sel lekoyfel isyavim loy el koyfin oise v'choylets. Sounds like it is here. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Weiter. So that's one. So that's because of the smichos. It's similar. In other words, there's two things similar. Sheish is saying in the B'daz Nazari, number one, and number two, it's also a similar type of drasha where it's a smichos from one thing to another. Two psukim which have nothing to do with each other, and we're saying from the smichos we learn a din. Another din. Anyone who's mevazes hamoedim is kilo of the Vedazar. What's pshat mevazes hamoedim? Cholamoed. That's how we understand it. It's as if he's over the Vedazara. Mevaz moedim two pshatim. Either he's mevazes hamoedim, in other words, he works on cholamoed, or alternatively the other way around, he's not mechabed cholamoed with good food and things like that, with a positive to make it like Yom to the positive way, or the negative way that he's working cholamoed. So it says kilo of the Vedazar. Dichsiv lehem seichel leisas Allah for someone let's kagamat tzitishim. Yeah, the passing parashas Kisisa, I believe. Maybe it's Pashim Shvatim, where it says on the one hand not to have a desire, and then says Eschag Hamatzis Tishma to keep Yom Tov, and we know that it's not talking about Yom Tov buffer. Rashi says, Rivan says, we're not saying to keep the first day of Yom Tov and the seventh day of Yom Tov. That's already said in other places. When the Pasuk says Eschag Hamatzis Tishma is coming about to say Cholamoid, and if you mavaz it, then it's a kilo of the Vedazar. Okay, another din where the smichos teaches me a din, even though it's two separate things. Someone says lashon hara, someone is mekabel lashon hara. Mekabel lashon hara doesn't mean listening to lashon hara. It means listening to lashon hara and accepting it as fact. Right? There's a deal. Sometimes you're allowed to listen to lashon hara, but you're never really allowed to be mekabel lashon hara. Even in those situations where you're allowed to be listen to lashon hara l'toyelas, I'm telling you what it says in Chafetz Chaim now. Yeah, even in those times when you're allowed to listen to lashon hara b'shvil toyelas, the vart is l'meichash miyaboy. You have to concern yourself with the possibility someone's a danger, so you need to know that this guy's a danger or he's a tricky guy and you can trust him in business. But it's l'meichash miyaboy. In other words, you concern yourself with the possibility that it's true, but to be mekabel it as fact, that's a problem always. Listening to lashon hara is usually asa, but sometimes is allowed. Mekabel lashon hara is a problem always, or more broad, more often. So mesabel lashon, someone says lashon hara, or mekabel lashon hara, someone is mekabel lashon hara, accepts the lashon hara as being fact, or made either shaker, or somebody is made either shaker roy lashlicha liklavim. It's roy to throw him to the dogs. He deserves to be after he passes away. You throw him to the dogs. Why? It's roy, not halach that he can actually do that, but he's worth. He's like an animal, basically. Yeah? It says in the pasuk lakav tashlichun oisei. Then the next pasuk is leisisa shem mashab, which is talking about leisisa shem mashab means to be mekabel an edus of a false edus, a false shmua, and that's to be mekabel. Kari beinami loisashi. Not just leisishi, you also read it loisashi, which means you not to say over, not to cause to listen, meaning not to say over. So that's the Makabel and Mesaper. May they the shaka, the pasuk continues. Like Sisa Shem Mashav, the pasuk continues. Look in the Al Toshas Yad Chem Rosh is 8 Chamos. The Hamishcha Psukim is talking about an 8 shaka. So all these three cases are next to the Kalev Tashlich and Ois. First, talk about what's up to the Kalev, what's going on with it. It's a nice limud. The Roy Lashlich Likam was Pshat. So say different Pshat in one Pshat. I saw is that the Kalev is a Kalev two ways. Either you just like a Kalev barks and frightens people without any reason. So to you saying Lashon hara, you're causing harm to somebody without any reason, or the other way around. A dog doesn't. The dog knows how to with its friend, it knows who to start up with, and you're kind of saying lashon hara indiscriminately about people, so then you're worse than the dog. Okay, upon him, that's the okay. So now we go back to the topic of Makkos, so shtei ritzuos. Yeah, there's a shtei ritzuos, And those shtei ritzuos were v'chamor. Tanash chamor. How do you know it's chamor? Why do it? What's the marker? Kilidor shahu gilila alei rechisa. It's like gilila, person from the Galilee, north of Israel, yeah, who said in front of Rav Chisda the following. It says in the pasuk, Yada shoykaneh v'chamor avos ba'alam Yisroel lo yada. The Navi is bemoaning the fact, yeah, in Yeshaya, Shiur knows its owner. Chamor recognizes the Avos Ba'alav. Avos Ba'alav is the its owner's Avos. In English, it's a trough, yeah, where he drinks from. So but Yisroel lo yada, the Yidden who sin when you do Naver, you're not recognizing your owner, which is the Eibishter. Oh my Kadosh Baruch says, Yobi Misha Makir of his ball of the Chamor, yeah, who recognizes its owner as Kalin. Should Yiparim Misha Eina Makir of his ball, should be punish the person who doesn't Naver. He's getting Malchus for not recognizing Avos Bala, meaning not recognizing the Eibishter and doing Naver. Rashi, is the Rashi? No Rashi. Okay. Earlier we said Alta Shiyat Rashi, these comments Hainu made Eid Shefer. Yoda Tefach. So it says that the handle is a tefach and is a thicker tefach, width of a tefach, and the length depends on the person, right? The Mishnah said it goes back to Alpi Kresa. Says the Gemara, Mabayish Mamino. If it's a kasha, yeah, Rabbi says we see from here, we make a ritzua for each person, right? Each person is a different length. It has to go to Alpi Kresai. So depending on how tall he is, that's how long the ritzua is going to be. And it's a kasha, or Rabbi is just saying Shema Mina. I think the Rabbi is just saying Shema Mina, yeah. So Amalei Rava, what do you mean? The Bez is going to need so many different ritzuas. That's not mistaber. Elo Amalei Rava Avkisa Isle Kiboy Mikte Bei Kiboy Marfiba. Had a certain knot, like a slip knot, yeah. And you would weaken it and tighten it depending on how tall he is. So double over on one end, and it'll be like a knot, like you have straps. You have loosen, tighten the straps to make it fit. But it was the same length, and you would just tighten or weaken it loosen it to match how tall he is. Okay. Rashi, which means not tighten. Osher Adok, yeah. Right, there it says Ya'avik Ish Imoy, means they interlock one with the other. So there was a tie, there was a knot. Okay. Malkinoisai, so the Mishnah says a Malkinoisai, two at the back, which way around was it? Shlish Milfanav, Shtei Yods Malachrav, one portion, 1/3 of the Malchus would be Milfanav, or Shtei Yodos Malachrav, 2 portions of the back. So how do we know? I'm kind of Damakra, the Pilu HaShoifet, the Kol Lefanav, Kaderish Asay B'Mispa. All right, so we learn out this passage. He says V'Pila Shofet the Kol Lefanav, Kaderish Asay. That's one. B'Mispa means plural. So the way it's learned out is the way it's understood is the Kol Lefanav is one portion Lefanav Kaderish Asay, and then it says B'Mispa, which means a double amount at the back. Risha Achaz Milfanav Shtei Rishis Me'ach. B'Mispa means a number, meaning numerous. Miot Rabim Shnayim. So the fana was Kedei Shasi one portion, and in the back was the Mispa, which is double. So that's how we know that it's a third in front and 2/3 in the back. Okay, right. A Malkinoi say. So the Mishnah said that A Malkinoi say you have to be Malka him while he is not standing and not sitting, right? Rather leaning. That's the Lashon. Lashon said in Mishnah. So now the words Vipila Shofet, the Gemara is going to learn something else out of. Those words is going to attack us. What do you mean? You need it for the Atzam Din that he shouldn't be. They should be leaning. They should be bent over. So how the another din that the Tzua is folded over? So the Mishnah. Shenema Vipila. It says Vipila, and basically it's almost like it says Al Tikri Pila Levichpila. Yeah, that's it's one way of learning it. Vipila doesn't just mean Vipila. Fold the ritzua. Yeah, the guy who says over here, "B'chsav yashin b'chsav yad." It says kribe v'chfila, and that's how the Melech Shlomo learns and other people. Okay. B'chayim Ashot is Yom Tanim Rishami. Okay, that's pshat v'chfila. Fredi Gemara Kasha V'mi Boile Lugufe. How can you say v'chfila is teaching me to double over the knot, to fold the ritzua? Sorry, V'mi Boile Lugufe. You need it for the atzam din of that he shouldn't be standing, shouldn't be sitting, like the Mishnah said. Were that to be the fact, you didn't have to say the lashon of pila. You could say yateu. You should lean. You should bend them over. My pila. Why are you saying it's a lashon which is mashma also the piloi? Shmami not tarti. We learn from the pasuk two things. So that's about the pasuk that it's saying the piloi. We know the leaning, but for that you could just say yateu. It says vipila. Chooses to say vipila over yateu. We learned that. Okay. Hamaka biyad. Okay, so we said in the Mishnah that Makkos is Makkos b'yadai achas. Yeah, he uses one. Go back. The last Mishnah. The Makkos b'yadai achas b'kol koyach. One hand b'kol koyach. So what's going on about? We're trying to get the most koyach, or we're supposed to get trying to get the least, right? So here you have Machlokes Tanoim, Tanur Rabbanon. Ein mamidin chazon and ele chaseri koyach v'yiseir mad. Tanakama says that you have to get the chazan, meaning the person who administers the malchus, someone who's weak. Yisroel Madan has more intelligence. In other words, he's going to be sensitive, and he doesn't have koyach. Both society physical koyach he doesn't have, and intellectually he's a superior intellect that he's not going to, he's going to be sensible. Rabbi Yehuda, she says no. It doesn't matter. He can be strong. He can be stupid. It doesn't matter. Some of Farshim explain that the vart is that it's machlokes whether Makkos has the same din as Misa. By Misa we have the vart Tzila Eidah, always trying to get the person to does the same thing apply to Makkos? Are we trying to make the Einish more lenient or not? Tanakama says we are. Yehuda says no, I don't care. Either way. Amar Rava. Rava says it is Kavasi the Yehuda mistabra. But Raya like the Yehuda, it doesn't matter. It can even be Chaserik, Madav, Yisei, it can even be people who are very strong, and they end up giving him very harsh malchus. Yeah, why? The Chesiv says in the pasuk, "Lo Yosef pen Yosef." The pasuk says, "Don't give more than 39 malchus." Right? So the Gemara says, "If you're going to tell me he's a weak intellect, an inferior intellect, therefore you need to warn him not to, because if you don't warn him, he's not going. He doesn't think. Are you talking about seichel the guy? Obviously, he's not going to give more than 39 malchus. He knows the din. He's not going to give more. He doesn't think, "Oh, I'll just give one." Right? Me sorry, Klazuri. So that's Rava's raya that Yehuda mistabra. The fact of the Torah is a very interesting raya. I mean, from the fact of the Torah, I haven't seen anything like that. I don't know. It sounds strange to me. Yeah. But Lo Yosef, the fact that the Torah says Lo Yosef must be as if the Torah is talking to a certain crowd, right? The Torah is talking to the chazan, the type of chazan. Okay, that's what the Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbanan says no. Adrabah. Aim azars and el mazuras punkt fakert. If anything. You have a right to the Rabbanan, so to speak. When the pasuk is a right to my shita, say the Rabbanan. Aim azars and mazuras. Lo Yosef, if he's chaser mad, what's it help to tell him not to? He'll do whatever he wants anyway. Lo Yosef, and Yosef's aim azars and mazuras. Someone who's already got his seichel in his hand not to give more. You tell him, be extra careful. Okay, those are the two. The Lo Yosef and Yosef can learn both ways. Okay, Tana kushumak magbi b'shteyod kushumak biyad achas. The Bryce which says that when you lift up the Ritzua, you do it with two hands. No, when you makkah only one by one. So he says gehechid the leisem midday. Gehechid midday means that you should, when you hit with one hand, apparently you end up using more koyach than when you hit with two. We want it to be with all the koyach. There's different precise. The aruch has a case of the teisi mirazia, meaning it should come up from the koyach. But either way, that's pshat. Gehechid the leisem midday means that there should be more. There should be more koyach used. Do we have Rashi here? Yeah. The misbestay shows me akra. The mis will I feel say koyach. I feel say mad. Ein lahak bekach. Yeah, misbestay me. I feel say mad. Says Rivan. The choyle na amban. Haye de is the bechulu the mizaris. Makom uetas. No, not okay. Weiter. La koire. Okay. So now back in the Mishnah we learned that koire, meaning to say that the person reads the psukim and so on. It says the place of Tesamikra. He finishes the passage, he goes back to the beginning. This is psukim which you say while doing the malchus. Now, who's koire? So we say like this. Tanur Rabbanan Bright says like this: Hagodu shebadayanim koire. The dayanim who paskin, that the guy gets malchus. It should be bekoyach.
One hand is prayer.
More koyach with one hand, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's into the lacy midday, but that's pshat. And then in the aruch, taka the gear says the teisi mirazia, which taka means that it should come with koyach. Apparently, with one hand, you end up getting more hand. Fine. Now, koire, right? So who's koire? You have the dayanim who passing. It says like this. Talking about the dayanim are not the ones hitting them. So who's koire? It says like this. Talking about agodol sheba dayanim koire. the most chashva of the three of the dayanim, of the three dayanim, right? Makkos is b'shloisha. Makkos doesn't need a bezin of 23. Makkos is b'shloisha, at least according to Tanakama, the Mishnah, and Sanhedrin. There's a shita which says that's b'shloisha possibly. The component halacha is that you do Makkos with three dayanim. So now you have the three dayanim. Then it's hagodah shebadayanim kairei. The most chashva dayan reads. Meaning reads the psukim Hasheni Moina. The second one counts, even though the chazan is also counting. You need someone to make sure that he doesn't make a mistake. So one of the dayanim is counting to make sure he doesn't go over the amount that's of Makkos, either 39 or whatever they decided he should have. The third one tells him to hit him. Also an interesting din. You have a dayan who says he call as if he. Okay. Right, the psukim, going back to the Godash of Dayan and reading that if he, let's say he's having full 39 Makkos, so Mayrich, he takes his time saying the psukim. He says the pasuk a little bit faster. Freddy Gemara, what do you mean? Well, what's the matter how quick you say? We say clearly that we can finish and you go back to Tchilas HaMikra, so why? Doesn't have to fit. So he says like this. Now, mitzvah l'tzamtem. The mitzvah is ideally to say these psukim and only to say it once and to make it fit that when you finish his Makkos hitting, you finish the pasuk. And therefore, if it's more Makkos, you have to say slower. If there's less Makkos, you have to say it quicker. If you didn't manage to do it in an ideal way, you didn't manage to work it out, you should finish, the psukim should be finished being read at the same time as the Makkos. So then, the pasuk says Makara, but the Brisa has an earlier part of the Brisa which says to say that you shouldn't give more. Right, to look in the Rivan, yeah, let's see the Rivan now. Reisha the Brisa Hachi Yisub Sifri Ein Ela B'Zman Shemoisifin Al Minyan Arbaim. I only know from Lo Yosef if they Moisif Al Minyan Arbaim, it's a problem. I'll call Oime the Oime Shamdu based in Minayim. Tamalem Lo Yosef Mikal Makam. Or as the Hagoy Sagra is Gairis Al Eila. The words Al Eila. Or sorry, no. Pen, yeah? It says pen loy. Tamaloi lo yosef pen yosef, right? The extra pen yosef tells me mikama. Okay. Now we continue. Makar Rabbi Eini the Makar. Rabbi Eini the chayev al lo yosef al manshi called Makkos harba loyimit. The Hemshech Psukim says like this. Yeah, arba yakenu. Hidden 40, which means 39. Lo yosef, don't add pen yosef. So lo yosef means not to add. Pen Yosef means not to add even when you're not giving him 40, when they estimate, let's say he should have 18. No, don't give him 90. And then he said, Lakois al Makarab. The Hemshech Advarim is mashma that only Makarab is a problem. Right? Eini al Makaraba, maybe only Chayiv al Yosef when you hit him many Makkos more than the Oymen. But what happens if you just do a Makkos Muetas? How do you know that that's still not? So that's what the Brisa is discussing. You'll see inside the Gemara, back in the Gemara. We'll go back to the Rivan in a minute. Sorry, but Tanabana Makarab Ain't a Makarab. I know you're giving many Makkos. Makomatz minayim. How do I know? Just a little bit. Tamaloima lo Yosef. Okay, and here you have to read with the Hagoy Sagra Aleph lo Yosef. You have to say Al Eila. That's how he's being goes. Not the lo Yosef. It's the Al Eila. Lo Yosef. Al Eila tells me on needs. Even if it's nothing more. If so, what's the whole Makarabba for? Makarabba gives you the impression that you're only not allowed to add Makarabba, many Makkos. So he says, limit al Rishonos, Shahain Makarabba. This teaches us that the Rishonos are Makarabba. The way the Rivan brings it is that you hit him against his will, and that's why it's called the Makarabba. Let's see the early Rivans that we missed. Makomat is meaning to say if you're oimid him for less, yeah, you know Makomat going shamdu lepachas Makka besidur echad, going shamdu lifchos Makka besidur echad. Any ela Makarab reish the Brisa hakitz b'sifri. Any ela b'zman shemisif non minarba. I'll call oimid oimid shamdu based in minayin. How do you know that if you're not allowed to be moist even not? Tamlim leis mikam Makarab any ela Makarab kol any the chayv aliyot ela b'zman shekol Makkos harba loimid. You only chayv aliyot when maybe only when you did many. Makkos Moetz afidu shtei Makkos after 9 the osla. Is it Tamaloima? So here too. So Klein al Eila according to the Gra. Tamaloima al Eila lo yisva lakois al Eila al mininoim. Even on the al Eila on these whatever the oimid was. Shu Makara meaning shenitzen lakois bal korche kein nira the Rabbi v'losh nacha kibur Rabbi. Okay. Right. Tanu Rabbanan. So here we're going to Niskalko. We're talking about Niskalko, right? We had in the Mishnah that if the Niskalko, right, he makes Gedolim Oktanim, so then he's Potter. Rabbi says it depends. The Ish has to be Gedolim. Tanim is not considered the Nikla that he's Potter from Malchus, and the Ish is even the man. That's the Machlokes Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Here we have a bride with the third Shitta Ramea, which makes no difference between the Ish and the Isha. But not like the Tanakama, who makes no difference between the Ish and the Isha and says Bein Berei Ben Memayim. He says it's only Berei, right? Now, Mishnah, we have a day that no difference between a man and a woman, whether Gedolim Katan and Potter. Because it says the difference between an Ish and an Isha. Ish Berei Ish Imam. Here we have a Shitta Rameh who says that there's no difference between man and woman, but both need to be only Gedolim. Katanim is not good enough to make them Potter. Yehuda says, like we see in our Mishnah, it's the same Rabbi Yehuda, Ha-Ish Berei Ish Imam. The Ish is off the hook if he does Gedolim, and the Isha even for Katan. The Chacham say this is Tanakam in line with the Tanakam of our Mishnah. Echad Ish, Echad Isha Bein Berei Bein B'May. Okay, period. Friday Markasha, what time you learned in the Brayso where Rabbi Yehuda says differently. Rabbi Yehuda Echad Ish, Echad Isha Berei. You're telling me Rabbi Yehuda makes a difference. Ish Berei Ish B'May. Here we have a Brayso which says Rabbi Yehuda holds Echad Ish, the Echad Isha Berei, which sounds like a male shit of the Brayso. So the Gemara says, Amar Nachmitzchol Shneim Shavim Berei. Didn't mean to say that only Echad Ish Echad Berei, meaning to say that Yehuda holds that both the Ish and the Ish would be Potter Berei with Gedolim, but the truth is that the Ish would even be with Mayim as well. He's just talking about that which they're Shavim. Okay. Let's continue. Let's do the Rivan now, Taka. Let's do the Rivan. I don't think it's any different than the. Not sure if it's any different than the gears we have over here. Let's see. Rabbi Yehuda, Ima Ish Berei V'Shem Mayim. Come Echad Ish V'Echad Ish Bein Berei Mayim. V'Tan Rabbi Yehuda Ima Echad Ish V'Echad Ish Berei. Rabbi Yitzchak. It's not the Nachman by Yitzchak. So Rabbi Yitzchak. Right. That's the difference. How do you come Rabbi Yehuda? Echad Ish V'Echad Ish Berei. How come Shneim Shavim Berei? The Mishkak Berei Torn of Mayim Ikeplut. Everyone agrees that Mayim is taka an argument. There's a difference, yeah. Okay. Weiter. Amashmur. Okay, here we have other situations where there's an embarrassment and in the middle of the process. Interesting. The Shmuel says, Kafsu v'rot mi bezdin. They tied him to the Amod and then he ran away from Bezdin. Potter. That's already enough. Since Gemara understands in this stage of the Gemara that because he was tied to the Amod, so that's enough of a bizayin that if somehow we couldn't finish the Malchus, we don't bring him back. So the Gemara asks the kasha. If that's Pshat Meisvei, we have a kasha. Kala bein b'rishayim bein b'shniya poitnei. If he was embarrassed, meaning by making it, right? So then we say poitnei bein b'rishayim bein b'shniya. Doesn't make a difference if it's before any type of malchus or after. Yeah, so let's see Rivan. Kala niskalka berei v'lishna dekar knock of nikol lashon zozel. Bein b'rishayim bein b'shniya. Bein koydem sheikol klau, whether it was totally before any hitting. Bein la'achar sheikol, or it was after hitting. V'hainu rishayim hagbar rishayim. That's what rishayim means. Shemagbi a lot la'hakas in niskalka ba'ois hagbar makkos pachad ish niskalka b'shniya. The hainu la'achar sheikol poitnei to the nikol krina beidal kali. He's been embarrassed. He's been disgraced, and that's it. Doesn't make a difference. That's when you get to making gedolim moktanim. But the brayso continues and says, it's a brayso. Nifseka ritzua, if the ritzua was broken and he can't continue, so then it depends. B'shniya poitnei, so if it was before the second one, but if he hasn't got any malchus yet, in other words, while you're preparing for the rishayna, so then aim poitnei. So Gemara asks the kasha, might have a karotz. You're telling me that the atzim to being tied to the amod is already an embarrassment. So what's the difference? Have a karotz is no worse than the case where he ran away, where you let him off the hook. So why over here, if nifseka ritzua b'rishoyna ain't poitnei? So the answer is hasam not takaloros. No, the premise was a mistake. You understood that the bizayin was the tying to the amud. In which case, what's the difference whether he was rot or whether the ritzua broke? He's saying that's not the embarrassment. The embarrassment was that he ran away. And the running away, running away from Bezdin, is considered a busha. And that's why we don't bring him back. But if it loyrots and it's just the ritzua broke, so as long as the malchus hasn't yet been started and he hasn't got any hitting, it hasn't been hit at all, so then it's not considered the nikla. Okay. Ta'ara Rivan. Bein b'rishayim we saw poitnei is the nikla k'nei beidal kala. Nifseka ritzua back bashni and nifseka poitnei is the nikla beisakai. He was taking embarrassed for the first hakah. Sheikov im koydem shikah nifseka k'shem yad lahak is ein zu kali. Not considered an embarrassment. weiter in the Brisa, in the Gemara. The Gemara brings another Brisa, Tan Rabbanon. Amdu l'kshiyilka, let's read the Goysa Bach. Amdu l'kshiyilka yikla, that's you have to read it, yeah. If they made an estimation, when they made him to estimate it, they don't just estimate him, they made an estimation that when he gets Malkus, he's going to be yikla, he's going to make whichever shit, whatever it is, but he would then be part of Poichin Oisai, then you patter him from anything. If the estimate is that no, it's only after he goes out of Beis Din that he's going to be the Skalko, then Malkin Oisai. Even if before you started Malchus, he was Kala, Malchus, you still give him Malchus, and so these are the conditions. It has to be that you've already given him Malchus, and as a result of the Malchus, he makes. I'm explaining. Kala b'tchila means before you've even started. That's not a P'tor.
Before we started, Mishnah says,
that's well after you started giving Malchus. Give him 1 or 2 Malchus, and then he's
before he started like he's scared.
Rivan, yeah. It's only as a result of it. So yeah, so that's the part. However, if they made an estimate that he's gonna get Malchus, then you don't give him Malchus. Let's see the Rivan. There's a lot of discussion about this. Exactly how it fits in with all the dinim earlier. Let's just see first of all Pasha Pshat. Shiyoka kala pirshali shiyoki yiklash abdush im yoku miyadis kalka berei poitrim depend Yosef and Nikliksiv. The ein noisel no makish yikla olemiyad kachshamaiti avam dush lo yiskalka ad laka malchus. However, if they estimated that it's only going to be after the malchus, then malchus. Kalat chila koim shkibush makal malchus after. Okay, stop over here. And there's not going to review because it's just this one Amud. As Hashem next week, we should, there's too long a modern, but as Hashem, we should finish